So I did it. Why is the unmute your speaker? No, yeah, that's good. Computer audio. All right, so if I do a slideshow from beginning, see, I can't, oh, there we go. All right, so Zoom. Share screen. Screen two. Share. Perfect. And then I will just mute myself and do my video.
Yep, that's better.
All right, so you can hear me and you can see me.
Yep.
And it's just the one big screen. It's not the screen with the notes.
No, I get the screen with the little smiley and that.
Okay, and that's it.
What was that?
What? That was me turning up my phone.
Oh.
Now I can hear myself echoing.
Okay, goodbye.
Bye. Good morning, guys and girls. There is about half the people logged in right now, so I'm just going to give it a few more minutes before we get started. And I was going to give you all the housekeeping stuff, but I won't, because then it would just be a waste of your time because you'll have to hear it all again. So just give it a few more minutes as we let more people log in. Kim, I was actually talking pretty quietly, but I don't want to have to yell either. So, Kim, I'm going to unmute you real quick. So does it sound like I'm far away, or how's it? If you're talking, I can't hear you. Hold on, let me turn mine. Oh, you don't have a mic, do you? Just kidding. Just kidding. Well, that's not working well. All right, so Steve says I sound fine on his computer. Kim, you may just want to turn up your volume. All right. Okay, Jess, Keegan. All right. So all but one is on, so we're going to get started. I want to thank all of you for joining me today. I know that for some of you, this may be uncomfortable at times, but I promise this first day is the worst of the touchy-feely stuff. It's just getting into, it's the foundation to build on everything else that I'll be going over the next 4 trainings. So please bear with me through this. I do ask that you participate in the conversations. If I ask a question, whether you type in an answer or raise your hand or just ask me to mute you so that we can have actual verbal conversations, because it would be nice to break up just me talking. I don't expect this to take a full 3 hours, but there is that chance. There are quite a few videos in here. There is some activity that will happen. So just be prepared for that. I hope that you all do have pen and paper so that you can take notes. I also have pen and paper so that I can take notes, because sometimes the feedback I get, I'm like, wow, I wish I had thought of that, or that would be really cool to bring up in the next few groups that I have to do. So with that, we'll get started. I will be taking a break around 10:30, probably 10 to 15 minutes for everyone just to kind of do what they need to do, and then we'll get back to it. So welcome to emotional training. Like I said, the first part is the touchy-feely part, but I think that all of you will be able to pick up on the reasons that we go through this once we get into the other portions. So the first thing I'm going to start with is a quick video. I think it's about 7 minutes long. It just goes into how we respond to each other on a daily basis and what happens in our brains that makes us react the way that we do when we're emotionally charged. So with that, I'm going to start the video. If anyone cannot hear the video, I have it set up to share my computer sound. I'm hoping that that works. I haven't used it yet before, so let me know if you can't hear it. And the picture on this is...
So the amygdala is the part of the brain that allowed us to learn for the first time. It's what separates us from animals who are simply instinctual. It's also our source of emotional memory. So anything that happened to us, we're sad, we're frustrated, we're happy, it's stored in our amygdala. It's like a little computer chip that remembers all of our emotional memories. It's also the part of our brain that answers one critical question of human survival. Does anyone know what that question is? Fight or flight. Exactly. It's the part of our brain that responds when we perceive a
That's not what I wanted to do.
threat. Now we're going to come back to the amygdala, but I also want to share with you the part of the brain you're more familiar with, your neocortex or new brain. That's where your IQ resides. It's also the site of our prefrontal lobe, which is where we have our working memory. Working memory is where we hold our thoughts. If you're computer savvy, it's where we hold our RAM. If you're not computer savvy, forget what I just said. Okay? But essentially, working memory is where we hold our thoughts. So when we're calm, we can hold 6 or 7 thoughts plus or minus 2. That's why you can remember a 7-digit phone number, but not a 10-digit phone number. So everybody has 6 or 7 thoughts plus or minus 2. So when you're calm, somebody says something to you, you can access something from long-term memory, you can read something on a piece of paper, you can form a complex thought, see options, and respond, all very, very quickly. We have an incredibly fast processor. Our brains are incredibly fast. Okay? So remember this about the neocortex, our working memory. In the design of the human brain, which of these two parts, the amygdala and the neocortex, do you think responds to a perceived threat first? The amygdala. It sounds obvious because we're in an emotional intelligence program, but in fact, back in the early 90s, the leading neurologists of the day, neuroscientists, thought that the IQ responded first. And there was groundbreaking research done by Joseph Ledoux at New York University where they were able to leverage new MRI technology to see brain activity. They were able to determine that the amygdala responds up to 100 times faster than your IQ brain when it perceives a threat. So if you remember nothing else today, remember this, that we feel before we think. Emotions come before thought. We're all wired that way. You can't escape that. You can simply learn to manage that. Now, what's the impact of that? Well, let's say you're somewhere where this is actually a functional system. Let's say you're out in the jungle. Now, I know a lot of you don't spend a lot of time in the jungle, but go with me here because it's a good metaphor. You're in the jungle and a tiger jumps out at you. Your amygdala, the emotional part of your brain, remembers the last time a tiger jumped out. Right? And it says, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. It starts to cause the release of chemicals that cascade through your body, adrenaline, cortisol. Blood moves to the major muscle groups, your heart rate increases, your breathing shortens, you're ready for fight or flight. In addition, the amygdala causes the release of chemicals into your brain that takes that working memory and starts to reduce how much working memory you have. It stops complex thought. Have you ever heard somebody say, I was so angry I couldn't think straight? That's exactly what's happening. Have you ever had a difficult conversation with a spouse or partner and 20 minutes later thought, oh, why didn't I say this and why didn't I say that? You think of all the good comebacks? Right? Because in that moment, you didn't have all of your working memory. You couldn't think clearly. And it makes sense. The amygdala doesn't want you thinking. The tiger's jumping out doesn't want you thinking, gee, I wonder what kind of tiger that is. It just wants you to stand and fight or run for the tree. Okay? So the amygdala does what we call hijacks your thinking mind. Literally, we call this an amygdala hijack. And it can take your thinking mind and move you to a default behavior that may or may not be skillful. And it can be hallmarked by a strong emotional response. It can be very sudden. And when the dust settles, that's when you think, ooh, you know, why did I say this? Right? Why did I do that? You know, for me, for an example, when I was first learning this, if I was feeling overwhelmed, I was, not managing my time really well, I was in a meeting and there was a lot going on and somebody was explaining something that was taking them a long time to explain, right? And I'm smart, so I know what they mean. So what do? I interrupt them to let them know that I know what they mean? Yeah, how well does that connect me with them when I interrupt people? But in that moment, that's my default behavior, right, that I've learned. So it's really important that we understand that when we are triggered emotionally, right, that email comes in, ooh, it triggers us, type, reply to all, right? And then 20 minutes later you think, maybe I shouldn't have sent that email, right? But we were being driven to a default behavior. Our emotions were hijacking our thinking mind and moving us to a default behavior, okay? So that's why we say with such certainty that emotions drive behavior. Remember I said at the beginning, our emotions literally can force us into behaviors that may not be skillful. So the amygdala is the part.
All right. So I just wanted to give you guys kind of an idea of what helps us react. This morning, Kim got to witness this. I'm in the conference room or in the mail room and I'm going through some paperwork and I'm like, why are they doing this? And that was just my quick emotional reaction. And later I'm like, okay, it's not that, why are they doing this? It's how can I better train them so that they don't do it this way? So it's just that going through that process and recognizing when your amygdala is reacting versus your actual thinking brain. So what is emotional intelligence? It's the ability to monitor one's own and other people's emotions, to discriminate between different emotions and label them appropriately, and to use emotional information to guide thinking and behavior. So what EI isn't, it's not, being all huggy and trying to be nice to people all of the time. That's not what we're saying that you have to do, although it would be nice. But we understand that there are those moments where our emotions are going to take over and we may have that reactive reaction to something. It happens to me on a regular basis, not a regular basis, I'm pretty good at it, but in meetings when we're talking about just multiple things, whether it's, me trying to get better benefits for people or whatever, or somebody comes to me with something, sometimes I overreact and I have to stop and go, okay, what is their point so that I can better process what they're saying to me and give them an actual intelligent response versus an emotional response. So that's what emotional intelligence is. Another example, let's say that you're in the yard areas at the beginning of a day or in the office, and you're trying to have a conversation with somebody and they're on there. I don't have my phone with me because I'm being good, but they have their phone and they're looking down on it and you're trying to talk to them about what your expectations are for that day. And they're just sitting there, type. Rather than going, what the hell is your problem? Why aren't you listening to me? It's, hey, is everything okay? Do you need a few minutes to finish what you're doing right there? By doing that, you're opening up some dialect. There's a chance that person's gonna be like, no, not everything's not okay. I got this going on and that going on. And maybe you hadn't planned for that time in your day, but it's really important in that moment. That person clearly needs to have that conversation. So it's recognizing that and allowing them to do so. And that could prevent distraction later in the day. Maybe they won't be on the job site, like just slumped over and not paying attention. Instead, they were able to vent, they got it out, and maybe you even helped guide them in a different direction so they could refocus. So there are, under Daniel Goleman's model of this, which is the one that I'm following, there are 4 pillars of EQ or EI. There's self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. So today we'll be going over self-awareness and self-management. We're going to get all the self stuff out of the way so that we can focus on building relationships and being able to maintain our productivity levels, set goals for ourselves, and all of that. So let's get through this today, and then we'll be able to move on from it. So self-awareness is considered a superpower. It is the true core of emotional intelligence, which is why we really have to go through it first. Underneath this pillar are 3 competencies, which are emotional awareness, accurate self-assessment, and self-confidence, and we will get into all of those later. The second pillar is self-management. Here, there are 5 competencies, which are self-control, transparency, adaptability, achievement orientation, and taking the initiative. And again, we'll go through that later. Under social awareness, there are 3 competencies. These are empathy, organizational awareness, and service orientation. We'll start getting into customer service during this one, which this company, I don't think there's ever been like formal customer service training. So this will be a good stepping point for us to start really getting into that customer service orientation training that we haven't really been through. And then the final pillar, which is the most lengthy, is relationship management. Under here, there are 7 different competencies. So I had to break this particular one up into 3 separate trainings. And that's why we're going to have so many trainings over the next 5 weeks. So the competency in this one is visionary leadership, developing others, being an influence, being a change catalyst, handling conflict management, building bonds, and then teamwork and collaboration. And you're going to see as we go through all of these pillars, you're going to see that some of them, there's a lot of crossover in different parts of these competencies. Trust is a big one that will come up regularly. Using proper conversation to not talk about somebody, but to find solutions and respect. And so all of that will come together. So was that really? Hold on, I've got to go back. All right, nope, that's right. So there is another video, and we'll go over just to talk a little bit more about what emotional resilience is. So hold on just a moment.
Do you have these 7 signs of emotional intelligence? We all know what an IQ is, and that most of us fall within the average range. We use names like smart, intelligent, dumb, idiot, and stupid when talking about a person's level of intelligence. What most people don't know is that we also possess an EQ, or EI, which is our level of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is difficult to measure in numbers because it is that thing inside us that recognizes emotions in ourselves and others, then guides us to respond. Understanding emotions may seem unimportant or trivial, but in fact it is the opposite. It is widely believed by experts that a person's level of emotional intelligence may be a better predictor of success and overall happiness than their IQ. What is emotional intelligence? Having a high level of emotional intelligence means that you can accurately express your feelings and take responsibility for them. People often say things like, "You hurt my feelings," and "you shouldn't have," which puts blame on the other person for the way you feel. A person with high EI realizes the feeling belongs to him and responds with statements such as, "I was hurt by that." Being emotionally intelligent means that you can identify and manage not only your own emotions, but the emotions of others too. It means you have awareness of your own feelings and are able to balance emotion and reason. You can recognize feelings and emotion in others and show empathy and compassion, which is a crucial part of all relationships, both business and personal. For example, a good leader has the ability to understand what motivates others and build on that motivation. 7 signs you are emotionally smart. Although emotional intelligence is not completely understood, it has become increasingly known that it plays a critical role in our quality of life. A person who is emotionally intelligent generally has better physical health, a more positive outlook, fulfilling relationships, and is more successful than those with low EI. 1. You can read nonverbal communication. This means you are able to look at someone and know by the look on their face, the way they hold their arms, their posture, or etc., and tell what their mood is. 2. You are interested in other people and their feelings and thoughts. When someone asks you, "What are you thinking about?" it shows their interest in understanding. Emotionally intelligent people want to know and understand others and genuinely listen to their answers. 3. You are emotionally resilient. Bad things happen in life. You lose a good job, your significant other moves on without you. You have setbacks and know there will be more coming. However, you also know you are strong enough to persevere until better times come. You do not internalize failure. 4. You know where you need improvement. People with low EI make the world believe they know everything and can do anything. When something goes wrong, they put the blame anywhere but on themselves. If you have a high EI, you know the areas in your life that need improvement. You are always learning and therefore always growing. 5. You are aware of your own feelings. You know how you are feeling, what caused the feeling, and how to process and deal with the feeling. Your feelings guide you towards finding a solution rather than shutting you down. 6. You avoid negative self-talk. When something does not go right, even if it was by your own mistake, you do not berate and belittle yourself. You are able to acknowledge what went wrong and explore your options for solving the problem, then move forward and do so. 7. You pursue success. You have dreams and strategies to make those dreams a reality. You set goals and regardless of how long it takes you to meet each one. You deal with setbacks, adjust shortcomings, and know that the only way you will lose is if you quit. How many of these qualities do you possess? The good news is that unlike brain intelligence or IQ, emotional intelligence can be raised to some extent. Part of our EI is innate, part of it is shaped by our environment, and another part is our attitude. Are you willing to learn to understand and conquer your emotions? Are you interested in becoming a better problem solver? Do you want to achieve your goals? Developing your emotional intelligence allows you the opportunity to avoid miscommunications and misunderstandings. It deepens your relationships and helps you balance work, home, and fun in a meaningful way. Remember, the biggest determinant of success is measured by EQ, not IQ. If you like this video,
Well, that didn't do what I wanted it to do. Okay, so one of the things that I'm going to go over real quick is just the 7 points that she had pointed out through this. So reading nonverbal communication and acting accordingly, we're going to go over that near the end of training. It's part of a huge communication training that I've put together that will be, I believe, in week 4. Interested in others people and their feelings. It needs to be genuine. You know, when somebody comes up to me and starts talking to me, I don't know them. Hold on, I may be on the wrong screen. All right, I will get to that, Ben. Thank you. So interested in other people and their feelings. It's important that even if somebody comes up to me that's a complete stranger, I need to hear what they have to say. I need to know why they're approaching me. And so you genuinely have to care, even if it's someone that you think maybe someone that you would never talk to in your entire life. Just give them that opportunity. You're emotionally resilient and can handle setbacks. One of the examples that I have given before, and those of you who went through this part of EI heard this story. Back in 2011, I lost my job. I lost my apartment. My car was repoed. I had to move back in with my parents, borrow their second vehicle. And I didn't see it. I didn't wallow in it. I didn't get so upset that I just gave up. I saw it as a new beginning. I decided then to go back to college and get my associate's degree in HR, which is where I wanted to be. I applied for a part-time job at Belknap just to get my foot in the door, and I got it. And within 3 to 4 months after starting, I was at full-time. I was able to start saving towards getting a house. I was able to get an apartment. So it was just, you got to look at those moments in life and not think, this is the end for me. I'm never going to get out of this. That's not true. It's a good time to reassess and say, okay, so if I were to start all over, where would I begin and how can I do that, and set those goals for yourself. So know where you need to make improvements and genuinely work towards doing that. For me, personally, I'm horrible with my child. Like, I can be emotionally intelligent with almost everybody in my life, but when it comes to my son, it's just too close. And so I really do try hard to work at that every day with him and realize yelling at him is not going to get either of us anywhere. And I need to pull back and I need to talk to him like I would anybody else in my life. Be aware of your own feelings and learn to use that ability to guide them to solutions. We are going to go through that in a little bit as part of this training. Avoid negative self-talk. This one is really important. And again, we're going to go over it a little bit later, but you have to be able to recognize when that's happening and correct it immediately so that you're not dwelling on something or making yourself feel so bad that you're not going to reach your goals. Pursue success and overcome obstacles. I gave a really good example of that. If anybody wants to share their own examples of some of this, feel free to just put something in chat and I hopefully will catch it in time to talk about it, or we'll just go back and talk about it afterwards. So Tim, I can't turn up the microphone on this. Some people can hear me really well, other people can't, and I apologize for that. I'm out of USB ports, or I would plug in a separate microphone. Let me see if I can. Hold on. Let me shut off my phones as well, so I'm not listening to that going off. All right, so technical difficulty. So let's take a quick break and come back in 5 minutes. I am going to try to turn on my, oh, hold on. He got it. Never mind. We don't have to do it. So the other one, Ben asked me if I'm going to be sharing any of this. So I'm actually going to be sending all of you this slideshow at the end of today's meeting. So you can go back, go through it. You can see all of my notes that I'm talking about and all my talking points. And that way you can rewatch videos and do whatever you'd like. All right, so that was Q&A and then chat. Very good. All right, we already watched that. We don't need to watch it again. Next video. Actually, just a slide. So we're going to talk about the differences between low emotional intelligence and high emotional intelligence. And this has been touched on already, so we'll go through this really quickly. So low emotional intelligence, people that are aggressive, demanding, egotistical, bossy, confrontational, we all know those people. And before I get this, there may be traits that you have on both sides. I have traits on both sides. I can look at this and say, there are times that I am confrontational. There are times that I'm bossy. And those are things that I need to work on. Other low emotional intelligence, easily distracted, glib, selfish, poor listener, impulsive, resistant to change, passive, unresponsive, slow, stubborn, critical, picky, fussy, hard to please, a perfectionist. On the high emotional intelligence side, we have someone who's assertive, which is much different than being bossy or confrontational. Ambitious, they drive, they're strong-willed, they're decisive. They tend to be warm, enthusiastic, charming, sociable, persuasive, patient, stable, predictable, consistent, good listeners. They're detailed, careful, meticulous, systematic, and neat. Any of you have walked into my office, you know that being neat at work is very difficult for me. I have papers everywhere, so that's one of those things that I need to work on. What are the benefits of emotional intelligence? We have increased leadership ability. You'll learn to respect your peers and employees. People will want to work with you. Increased team performance. Employees who feel heard and respected will work harder and more efficiently. And that goes both ways. So we have both crew leaders and regular employees on these calls. And the reason we're doing that is because we want all of this to be reciprocated in both directions. It's not just we expect crew leaders to behave in this way. We expect everyone to behave this way. And we think that everyone working together can really make this happen and really take our culture to the next step. It improves your decision making. You'll learn to make decisions using reason rather than emotion. decreased occupational stress. As you become more aware of your emotions, you'll learn to minimize negative feelings that you have and increase positive thinking, which is awesome. Reduce staff turnover. Employees more often leave due to a supervisor or a leader that they're working with versus pay, benefits, or any of that. So if we can all increase our emotional intelligence, it will help that retention piece greatly. Increase personal well-being. When we are in tune with our emotions, we are less likely to dwell on the negative. Instead, we will work on finding solutions for those negative feelings. So we're now going to start going over the 4 modules, which are, we'll go over the 1 module, which is self-awareness and self-management. So 2, I can't count today. Clearly it's Monday. So the next part of the training for today is going over all of that. After that, we have social awareness and then relationship management, which will be other days. So any questions up to this point? That was just a quick intro into what we're going to be going over, what emotional intelligence is, so that we can be prepared as we move forward. I'm not seeing anything, so we're going to move on. Okay, so the first part we're going to talk about is self-awareness. And that is the ability to recognize emotions that you experience, understand the feelings associated with the emotion, and understand what you think and do as a result. Emotion drives our reactions to almost everything. We often make those reactions in the moment. And so for this to be effective, we have to work on emotional intelligence and self-awareness every single day so that we don't have that moment. We look back and 20 minutes later, we're like, oh, I wish I hadn't said that, or I wish I hadn't sent that email, or I really could have said something completely different. So is it going to happen right away? No, it takes time to develop. And even then, you could have the most emotionally intelligent person in a room. They still have emotions. They still have an amygdala. They're still going to have those reactions if something sparks inside them, but they're quicker to react and say, I'm sorry if they had a bad reaction. And that's going to be a big part of emotional intelligence, is learning to say, I'm sorry. And that is one of the hardest things to do. So I'd like to ask, well, we'll go through these and then maybe we'll talk about them a little bit. So what do you guys think are some benefits to self-awareness? If you understand your emotions and those reactions, what are some benefits that you feel could come of it? So I'm going to wait for somebody to just type in a quick response. Don't assume someone else is going to do it. Just throw something out there in the chat section of today's presentation. So what are some benefits of being self-aware? Team morale, absolutely. Less impulsive reactions, absolutely. These are good answers. Thank you guys, I appreciate it. Some of you have been through this already, so you should know the answers, but it's been a long time. It's been almost a year. All right, I'll let this one go, but I expect more interaction later. So some of the benefits of self-awareness, it strengthens communication by giving us the ability to better express our ideas, our concerns, anything that we have to talk about. It fosters empathy. We're going to do a whole training on empathy later down the road. But once you recognize your own emotions, you can begin to better understand how others may feel in a similar situation. That's really important. So we're not looking for sympathy, the, oh, woe is you. It's, I can understand how that may feel, or tell me how that makes you feel. Those two things are very empathetic, and that's what our goal would be when fostering empathy. It provides an environment for employees that encourages motivation. Employees want to be around people, so they won't avoid you. They may have questions, and if you don't have self-awareness and you're not going, wow, I'm really aggressive today, people aren't, and you're putting up these roadblocks where people aren't going to come and talk to you about questions they may have about a job or whatever, then you're setting yourself up for mistakes to happen. So it's being aware, having a bad morning, I just need to like calm down for a few minutes, I'm going to walk away, and then when you come back, approaching people with a better mindset. Next one is, It improves your critical thinking skills. And critical thinking isn't engineering, as some people, I know that in other trainings, people see critical thinking is working through different engineering things that need to happen on a job site, or working on a big project for a manager and getting all the details right. Critical thinking in emotional intelligence is seeing things from both sides, or all three sides, or however many sides there are, and coming to a conclusion that is educated and understands where other people are coming from, and not just based on your own opinions. It provides an understanding that there is personal growth in making mistakes. It's okay to fail. I had this conversation the other day with someone. I've failed my way through my career. I haven't been perfect in it. And my career started back when I got out of high school. I went right into the workforce, and every time I made a mistake, I learned from it and said, "Ooh, I really am not going to do that again." So understand that failure is growth. You're able to be proactive rather than reactive. This is very true. It gives you the ability to meet your goals. Rather than reacting to the things around you, you can start planning a course of action that will get you to your goals. And continuous self-development, that goes along with setting your goals and being proactive. So these are just a few of the benefits of self-awareness. It's not all of them, but these are the major points. So there are three competencies under here. There's emotional self-awareness, accurate self-assessment, and self-confidence. Under the self-assessment, in the last class that I did, there was actually a paper that everybody filled out. We went over the scoring of it, and it gave us some pointers on how we can improve our emotional intelligence, or our self-awareness rather. Unfortunately, I can't hand out that paper here, and it would have been really difficult to put it up on the screen where you guys could actually see it. So instead, I'm going to show you a link that you can go to, and as part of the slideshow that you receive, you can just click the link when you open the slideshow, and it'll take you to the self-assessment. So we're going to go through each of these. So emotional self-awareness. This is where you're able to read and understand your emotions, as well as recognize their impact on work performance and relationships. If you approach somebody and you're grumpy, you should be able to see in their face, like they're like, and that should immediately be like, oh, I clearly just said something that gave them a negative reaction, and I need to figure out what that was. So that's part of emotional self-awareness. This is the infamous feeling wheel. I also was handing this out at each of the classes, but can't do that. So please, if you want a copy of this, I can print it in color. It's really nice to have with you. I've reflected back to it. So one of the first things in emotional self-awareness is having the ability to understand what specific emotion that you're experiencing in the moment. And sometimes that's difficult. Sometimes you just feel angry and you're like, but why do I feel angry? So let's say that, I don't know if you guys can see, and I don't know if you can see my pointer, but we're going to go to the anger. Obviously, it's in the dark pink on this. So in that anger, am I feeling enraged, exasperated, irritable, envious, or disgusted? Let's say I'm feeling exasperated. So there are to go beyond that, and under that you have agitated or frustrated. So I can ask myself, okay, I'm angry. And then, all right, to narrow that down, I'm exasperated. And to finally narrow that down even more, I'm frustrated. What am I frustrated with? So I'm able to ask that question, and I can say, oh, I'm frustrated that, I've talked about this 18 gazillion times and people still aren't following what I've asked them to do. So how can I then turn that around and go, all right, well, how am I going to fix that? So that's a way that you can definitely work through using this feeling wheel. And it's such a great tool. Before in the other classes, we also ask people to journal, which is something that you're always welcome to do. At the end of the day, doing some self-reflection is always fantastic to go through and say, okay, what did I feel good about today? What did I not feel good about today? And you can use this feeling wheel to go through some of that. Okay, so next, was that really?
The thing that gets in most people's way of...
Yeah, this kid he's kind of obnoxious, but he's really smart. I've seen some of his other videos. So we're going to watch this. This is part of self-awareness as well. And then we'll talk a little bit about the self-assessment.
The thing that gets in most people's way of achieving their hopes and goals and dreams more than anything else in their entire life is paradoxically themselves. And the problem is that they can't see how they're doing it because they lack self-awareness. Now, this is a question that I wish I got more often. How do I be more self-aware? Because without self-awareness, you can't see your own failures, your shortcomings, and you have no way to catch your own blind spots, which means that in certain areas of your life, you're going to run in circles, giving rationalizations and excuses for why you're stuck and missing the real point, which is why in this video, I want to give you some mindsets and exercises to increase your level of self-awareness and get out of your own way. The first mindset that is absolutely essential is to recognize that in your life, the person who is most likely to lie to you beyond anyone else is yourself. We have some very, very complicated booby traps up here. We have ego defense mechanisms that want to keep us A, safe from a survival perspective, but B, safe from a self-image perspective. So if we get evidence, if we behave in a way that doesn't suit our self-image and we don't like the story that it creates about us, we tend to discount that evidence. So for instance, if you're in a relationship, as I was at one point, that isn't working out, but you're afraid to end it, you are unlikely to admit to yourself that you're a person who acts based on fear. What you will instead do is discount all the reasons that the relationship might not work and create rationalizations for why those don't matter for you. This is why your friends can often see flaws in the way that you behave and vice versa much more easily than you can see them yourself. So step one, recognize that in all sorts of emotionally charged areas of your life, you're likely lying to yourself. The second thing to help us get past that initial fact that we have to accept is to put honesty before integrity. Now, this sounds counterintuitive because integrity is important. I talk about it on the channel. If you have a value, you really do want to work on living it. The problem is that there's a couple of emotionally charged areas in your life right now and in my life that we are incapable right now of emotionally breaking through. And what that does is because we have these ego defense mechanisms, for instance, that won't let us leave this job or leave this relationship or give ourselves the real reason why we're not approaching the person that we would really like to start a relationship with, whatever it is, rather than be integrous with that and do the hard thing, because we're incapable of that, our brains save us. And they come out and they say, no, 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 no. All that evidence as to why I'm not approaching that person is bogus. The real issue is this thing. And we block ourselves from ever being able to be honest in the first place because we feel so much pressure to immediately act with integrity. The way to deal with this, weirdly enough, is to give yourself permission to live in paradox, to admit that you really should do something and then go, you know what? But I'm not going to. And for me, for instance, this was something that was true. I felt morally obligated for probably years to stop eating meat. And I went for years without doing that. And it took me up until last year when I actually stopped eating red meat and poultry and all that kind of stuff. I still eat fish. Not the point of the video. The point is that I had to live in paradox for a long time before I was able emotionally of making that leap to doing what I felt was morally right for me. And the same is going to be true of you. So give yourself permission to be first honest and to live for a period of time without putting that into action. So now that we've done that, what I would like you to do after this video, you can even start right now, is to make a list. And you're going to call this list self-image. And on this list, you're going to write in this order things that you are. I am a good friend. I am a good son. I am smart. I am shy. I am nervous in groups. Whatever it is, go ahead and write out all the things that you are. If you do that for 5 minutes, you have a pretty good image of what your conscious self-image.
So I'm going to actually ask that each of you in this moment, we're going to take a few minutes to actually do this because this really is a great exercise. So go ahead and hopefully on your paper and pen that you have next to you, because I asked you to have it available, take a few minutes to write out self-image. And if anyone needs me to play that part back a little bit, boy, I stopped that in a perfect spot for him. If anyone wants me to play that part back so that you can get a better understanding of what it is that he's asking for, just let me know and I will absolutely do that. But just write 5 or 6 things that you feel that you are. And I know this is really difficult for most people because it's talking about yourself in either a good way or bad way, and that can be very difficult. All right, so we're gonna continue with the video and then we'll do the next step as well.
Of yourself is, which is great. Then what I want you to do is even more important. Because after you've written out everything that you are, I want you to create another list and I want you to describe yourself without using any form of the verb to be. So that means you can't say, I am a good friend. You would have to say, instead, I call my friends 3 times a week and they regularly return my calls. Instead of saying that you're a good son, you could say, I bought my mom this amazing present for her birthday last week. Whatever it is, you have to use actions and the responses of people to describe who you are.
Okay, so we're gonna do that as well.
When you do this,
Oh, I
you
don't want
might
to
see
get that.
some disparity.
I want to be able to see what it says. So you're going to be able, so we're going to take 2 of those statements on your list and create an action and the response that you receive. So as he said, if you wrote, I am a good son, instead say, I bought my mom this gift last week because she did something for me and she was extremely happy that I did it and was very appreciative. So think about how you can reword some of those I am statements and create the action that you do to prove that you are, or in the response, or you're going to see, I thought I was this, but what have I done to really show that I truly am? And that's the difficult part. So take a few minutes and do at least 2 from your list.
For instance, you might write that you're an extremely moral person, but as you go through and you look at your list, there's not too many examples of you behaving in a highly moral way.
Okay, so that was part of it too, sorry. I want to thank you guys for being my first class and letting me fumble through this. So I'll be better at the next one. And so long. All right, so we'll continue from here.
In fact, there might be examples of you behaving out of line with your morality, and you want to explore all different kinds of relationships here. The point is, on the one hand, when we describe what we are, we tap heavily into our own identity, the way we would like to see ourselves. But when we describe what we do, we are driving down to more of how we spend our time. In fact, that's a great thing to write there. I spend my time doing X, and write out the things you do in your day. That is a better example of who you are than the way that you see yourself, unfortunately. Once you've done that, another way to get in some perspective on yourself is to actually go to people who know you well, because they are not under the same delusions that you are. They don't buy all the stories that you tell yourself about yourself. So I've created a list of questions. I'll list a couple of them here in the description, in the sidebar as I'm talking, but you go to a friend or a group of them, a family member, a coworker, somebody who knows you well, and you say, look, I'm trying to get some perspective on myself. More than anything here, I want to grow, I want to improve, and I want to learn about myself. So I'm going to ask you some questions, and you might have some seemingly harsh feedback that maybe you've told me before, maybe you haven't. For the purpose of this exercise, I would like you to tell me the bald-faced truth as best you can. And if I ask you questions, I promise it won't be out of defensiveness. It's going to be out of a desire to understand more. And you're going to ask them, for instance, compared to other people that you know, what is something that I struggle with? Or in what ways am I hypocritical? And I'll list a number of these questions, but these are tough questions for them to answer because they don't want to offend you. And they're tough questions to hear the answers to. And you'll know that you're doing this right if you've created a safe enough space for them to give you answers that make your heart race, that make you uncomfortable. That is a sign that your self-image is being disrupted, attacked a little bit. What they're saying isn't necessarily 100% true, but it absolutely does give you something to work with. So that's the second thing you can do. The third thing is a habit. Because the truth is, self-awareness isn't something that you're going to get just from 2 simple exercises. You need to begin to make a practice of viewing the truth behind your desires, your motivations, and your feelings. And in order to do that on a daily basis, it is my opinion strongly that you need at least 10 minutes of space. Now, space can be any number of different things. Space can be meditation. Space can be taking a walk. It can be surfing. It can be talking to a therapist or a counselor. Space can be something that I do all the time, which is I find the cheapest massage parlor I can go. It's usually some kind of a foot reflexology place. And I go for an hour, not for the massage, but because I know I will just have to sit there for an hour and live with my thoughts, think, reflect. And that has led to some of the biggest business breakthroughs that we've had, as well as some really, really big breakthroughs in the area of self-awareness. But you need every single day at least 10 minutes of this if you care at all about self-awareness. I'm going to talk about meditation in a future video, but one thing that I think that is worth calling out that you can get on your calendar once a week would be therapy or counseling. And to do that, I want to thank our sponsor for this video, BetterHelp. Now, BetterHelp is something that I've used. They have licensed counselors that you can talk to from your home in order to work through some of the issues, the problems that you may have. And in talking to the counselor that I had,
All right. I don't know why it keeps doing that. Okay, so that's a really great video. And there will be, based on this video, I do recall giving some homework, and I will go over that once we're at the end of this. But I will say that, again, that 10 minutes of time at the end of each day to kind of self-reflect and just think about things. For me, and maybe this is TMI for some of you, but I do my best thinking first thing in the morning when I'm in the shower. Like, there's no disruption. There's no one there. I can do what, just sit there and think to myself. And I come up with some really great ideas when I'm just by myself. So that's also one way to do it. And maybe you end your day with a shower, and that's your alone time to just sit and think and go through what happened that day and really process it.
the thing that gets in most people.
Goodbye. So the self-assessment that I'm going to send you is this link, and it's really quick 15 questions that get scored as you answer, and the results to your score are below, and it gives you just some hinters on how you can improve some of your self-awareness. Self-confidence, we're going to talk a little bit about this. So self-confidence is where you have a positive and strong sense of your own self-worth. It's not arrogance, it's not cockiness. This is truly just self-confidence, and we will get into the difference. So the difference between confidence and arrogance. When it comes to your self-esteem, someone who's confident applies personal criteria for goals and success, whereas if they're arrogant, they're constantly seeking validation from other people. How great did I do? Was I not awesome in that? That's someone who's arrogant, not someone who's confident. When it comes to personal status, someone whose confidence tries to add value, introspective of hierarchy. It doesn't matter where they are, they just want to make things better. When it's arrogance, they brag about their achievements and abilities. And we all know somebody that's on that arrogant side. When it comes to socializing, someone who's confident is comfortable approaching and talking to strangers. On the arrogant side, they fear rejection and interacting only in safe options. Now, that doesn't mean if you're an introvert that you're arrogant. That's a completely other topic, has nothing to do with it. But for people who truly are arrogant, they want to talk to people they're familiar with because they know that those people will stroke their ego. In the arena of awareness, people that are confident are keen to learn new skills and fill knowledge gaps. And people who are arrogant hate being wrong. They neglect empathy or compromise. When it comes to attitude, people with confidence are calm in the face of rudeness and disagreement. And if you're arrogant, you tend to be emotionally reactive and vindictive. That's not to say that all of the time you won't have some type of emotional reaction, but for the most part, you can handle adult conversations about virtually almost anything and not allow your emotions to take over. If you're confident, you're proud of your choices, your hobby, and your quirks. If you're arrogant, you hide your insecurities and vulnerabilities. And for growth, a confident person wants to improve for their own development, whereas arrogance, they highlight other people's flaws so that they can feel superior. Another sign of someone who is arrogant is someone who doesn't admit mistakes or apologize for them. If you're self-confident, you have a feeling of trust in your own abilities, quality, and judgment. Emily Starrett wrote, when we can't admit our own shortcomings, we are not likely to take advantage of coaching and advice from peers and potential mentors. So please keep that in mind. If someone's trying to teach you something and you're shutting them down, you're not opening yourself up to learn, and that's part of being arrogant. And it limits your growth potential, and that's never good. So how do we conquer arrogance? Well, we're going to pay attention to our behaviors. People who are arrogant or overconfident may not know that they're that person. So learn to read a room. If people are kind of giving you the side eye, or every time you walk over, they're like, oh, I gotta go. Pay attention to that and start wondering, okay, what is it about what I'm doing is pushing them away? Give others the chance to pitch their ideas before you pitch yours. It really is important that if you're the one who's always doing the talking, you need to sometimes zip it up and listen. I recognize that was one of the things that I was doing back probably 5-6 years ago. I'd sit in a conference room and I wanted to pitch my idea right away because I wanted to be the one who had the best idea. And I realized I wasn't learning anything. So I stopped doing that. And now I tend to keep quiet and I let other people talk first. And then I can kind of build upon what they're saying, or just pitch my idea if it's completely different than what theirs is. Use the mantra, I really don't know everything. It's really important that we don't go into situations thinking that we are the almighty, all-knowing. It's not true. There isn't a single person in this company who knows absolutely everything. There isn't a certain person in your life that knows absolutely everything, and you certainly are not a person who knows absolutely everything. So really, when you're having a conversation and you catch yourself wanting to talk over someone or interrupt them, start with this: I really don't know everything, and let them continue. So think of a time you were too aggressive with someone. Write down how you could have handled things differently, and then go back and apologize, even if it's been a couple months. That is going to show them that you really are trying to progress and that they can trust you. By not doing it, they're probably not going to open up to you again, and they may have some really good ideas. So low self-esteem is something that we need to work on too. It's on the opposite end of the spectrum of arrogance. And again, you may see a little bit of yourself on one side and the other. When you feel really good about something, or you have a really strong characteristic or talent, and you're just like, I want to showcase this. But in other times you're like, oh, I'm just going to kind of go to the back of the room and pretend I'm not here. Those two personas can live inside one person at any given time. So low self-esteem also plays a role in our emotional intelligence. So what are some signs of low self-esteem? Anxiety and worry, depression, the inability to make eye contact. People are quiet in meetings. They tend to be withdrawn. They're timid and passive. They can actually become hostile because they are feeling attacked. They have excessive preoccupation with personal problems. They could be people who are like, oh my God, I've got all this going on and I just can't focus. Fatigue is a big one for low self-esteem. Someone who's always tired. They can't handle compliments. People who are just like, hey, you did really good on that project. And they're just like, I could have done better. No, say thank you. Like, that's someone with really low self-esteem. Domineering to overcompensate. So somebody with low self-esteem in a moment may all of a sudden be really harsh, and you're just sitting there like, what the hell just happened? And it's just that they hit a breaking point and they had to be aggressive to show that they're not a weakling in their own mind and in your mind as well. So how does this affect their ability to use emotional intelligence? Well, are they able to share their ideas? Probably not. How will they handle feedback and criticism? Not very well. And they won't learn from that feedback and criticism. They're not going to be able to go, okay, so this is where I need to work on for the next 6 months or however long it is. Do you think they can read other people's nonverbal cues? Probably not, because they may be looking right at you and they're thinking, oh, I just want to be done. I want to be done. I want to get out of here. And they're not able to really pick up what you're saying. They're not able to see that maybe your tone is a certain way, your body language is completely different. So before someone with low self-esteem can learn emotional intelligence, they must first learn self-confidence. So how can we improve our self-esteem? So we can improve our self-image. We can smile more, even if we're faking it. Smile, wear clothes that are wrinkle-free and clean. Honestly, having a clean appearance just makes us feel better. We can make eye contact, keep our chin up and shoulders back. In talking with people, I knew this girl who had long hair, and she always talked to me looking this way with her hair covering her face and kind of giving me a sideways glance through her hair. Very timid, low self-esteem, total introvert. So these are things that you need to be aware of if you're talking to someone. Are you looking at them? Fake it until you make it. Really, this isn't an end-all solution, but it can help. If you act confident, you may begin to actually feel confident. Pull your shoulders back, stand tall. One of the things that Ruth has shared with me many times, and I think it's one of her daughters, I can't remember if it's Kat or Grace, but they get into superhero stance. And that's literally just standing up with your hands on your hips, your feet hip width or further apart, and your shoulders are back and your head is up. And you just stand there for 5 minutes. What you're doing is taking up space, and taking up space is very confident. You will see executives, any executive who leans back and does this, they're confident, maybe a little egotistical, but what they're doing is they're taking up space. People who take up space are confident. Even when I talk, you guys can see me using my hands, like I'm taking up space when I'm talking. I feel confident about what I'm doing. So think about taking up some space. Write down what you want to say to the person before you approach them. A lot of times, some of us are not very good verbal communicators, and we stumble over our words, or we get back to where, our office is or into our vehicles at the end of the day, said, I really wish I had said that. I had this whole list of things I wanted to talk about, and I forgot something that was really key in having a breakthrough. So I highly recommend, if you're going to go talk to your supervisor, you need to talk to an employee, or you need to talk to Hayden, and you're nervous and you're anxious and you're afraid you're going to forget something that you say, take some time the night before or 20 minutes before you're supposed to meet and write down all your key points that you want to talk about. And don't be afraid to bring that list in with you and check it off as you get through it. It's important that you get all of the things that you want to say out. Speak up. This doesn't mean be aggressive or commanding. Obviously, we don't want to be that person either. Be professional, give the facts, and make a request that is known. It's okay to ask for things. This may also involve being the first one to speak up in a meeting. If you've got something to say and everyone's quiet and you're kind of like, oh, I really want to say this, but I don't want to be the first one to talk. Find the courage and do it, because you may realize that you have the best idea, and don't let someone else steal that from you. Absolutely talk about it. Here's another mantra for you. I can do it. I will do it. By saying I will, you're making a commitment. Just saying I can that's not a commitment. You know you can do it, but are you gonna? So use that second part. I will do this. I will make this happen. I'm going to go do this. It's really important when you're setting goals that you state, I will, and then finish that sentence. Focus on small parts of a larger goal. This is so important. Sometimes people get into a project and it is so overwhelming that they don't even know where to start. They just sit there and they're like, it's easier for me not to begin than to get so engrossed in this that I'm overwhelmed and I'm setting myself up for failure. Instead, take that big project and break it down into smaller parts. For those of you in the project department, you are probably very familiar with a Gantt chart, and that's exactly what this is doing. It's taking the larger sum of the whole and breaking it down into much smaller, manageable parts. Track your success. Once you get into those smaller pieces, you can then celebrate, pat yourself on the back. Okay, I got part 1 done. Now I'm going to move on to part 2. And as soon as you're done part 2, celebrate that. It's really important that you give yourself something back for making those accomplishments. So how can we improve our self-awareness? We can revisit our self-assessment. After you take it, go back to it and see if you're making any improvements on the areas that were your weaker points and not your strong points. Ask for feedback and listen. And that's going to be part of the homework for this. So when people are talking to you and they're giving you what maybe feel like a negative criticism, consider it just feedback and act on it. Be aware of your emotions. Keep a journal. Again, I used to pass out journals in this class and ask people to write into them every night. A little more difficult being that we're online and I have such larger groups than I did before. So if you're someone who enjoys journaling, feel free, get a journal, do it on your computer, wherever, even if you want to type it into your phone as a text message and send it to yourself, anything to just kind of go over how you felt through the day, any areas that you felt you could have handled differently and how you can do so going forward. Reflection is an amazing thing. Embrace failure and learn from it. We went over that a little bit. There's a great book that we have here if anybody wants to read it. It's called Failing Forward. And it's just basically, it's good to make mistakes because we learn from them, we grow from them, and we can be more successful because of them. Listen more, speak less. Open yourself up and allow other people to talk. Utilize the feelings wheel. Conquer arrogance. If you know that you're an arrogant person, go back to that. Look at that slide again and how you can come off as more confident and less arrogant. And then improve your self-esteem if you have issues there. So this is the end of part 2. Anybody have any questions on this part? Not seeing any. Okay. So we have one more part. I am going to take a quick break. Please don't log off because you won't be able to get logged back in. But let's take 5 minutes. So we will go, we'll go to 10:15, and then if everyone could come back, please. And I'm going to ask you to put something in the chat so that I know that you're here. So 5 minutes. Okay, so as you come back, if you could just put like just a random letter in the chat, just so I know that you're here, showing me that you're in, so I don't have to keep. Ooh, I wonder what that letter was for. All right, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 out of 12 people back. 12, 13. All right, so 8. Again, if you're just coming back, just throw a quick letter in the chat so I know that you're here. I should have, I can't math today, like 5 more people should be letting me know that they're back. Fantastic. All right, so we're just going to get going. Although I should wait the full minute because I did say 10:15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, I'm missing 2 people, but we'll give it the next minute. All right, I'm moving on. I'm sure they'll be back shortly. Okay, close that. Close that. Okay, so we're going to move on to part 3, which is self-management. So self-management is how to control and express emotions without sabotaging relationships through learning how to adapt to change, strive for excellence, and take initiative to reach our goals. Okay, so the 5 competencies within this, we're going to talk about self-control, transparency, adaptability, achievement orientation, and initiative. Okay, so what are some signs someone doesn't have self-control? Let's talk about that. So if someone could just throw some stuff out there. If you're talking to someone who doesn't have self-control, how do you know? You can throw it in the chat, or if you want to talk, just let me know and I can unmute you. Quiet class. All right, I haven't heard from Amy. I haven't heard from Kim, Ryan Boisel, Cody. Start throwing something in there. Great. Yep. Shares negative thoughts. Oh, I clearly did not shut off my phone. Swipe left. All right, let me turn this down. Nope, I want the Wi-Fi ding dong. Mute. Done. Hopefully there's not an emergency. If they are, they can call the office. All right, so shut that off. All right, so I'm back. So some signs that someone has no self-control. They share negative thoughts out loud. That's a good one. They're impulsive, very. They say things before thinking it through first. Absolutely. Speaks without thinking. Everybody's on the same page with that one. Very good. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you participating. So, and of course, this affects people that they're talking to and they have negative experiences with it. So let's talk about self-control. All right. So self-control is the ability to keep disruptive emotions and impulses under control. And you guys touched on both the disruptive and the impulsive part of this. So Donald Duck is a great example of someone who can't control himself. We've all seen it. I hope we've all seen it. Even if you're part of a younger generation, we all know who Donald Duck is. So having self-control can take you from Donald Duck being furious to Donald Duck being happy. And who doesn't want a happy Donald Duck? So Does anyone have any example of where they had to practice self-control or realize they didn't do it? So if you've like lost your temper, do you want to share that? And it's okay to share. I don't have to say your name. I could just read your story. But I think we've all had those moments where we've completely lost our crap. For me, I was pregnant with Evan. And I go back to personal things, and I hope people aren't thinking that I'm just overindulging in my personal life. The reason I go to my personal life is because I don't want to give work examples necessarily, because I don't want to potentially call out somebody that may be in the group, or it's basically all it is, really. I just don't want anyone to feel like, oh, she's talking about the example with me. So I revert to my personal life because it's easier for me than to do that. So for me, when I was pregnant, I had a nasty temper. I lost control multiple times and had to get new phones because I like to throw my phone at the windshield while driving, across the room, wherever. There have been times that even just being a parent, like, holy cow, that is probably one of the most frustrating jobs in the world. And I remember this is probably the worst example, or maybe the best. So there was one day, Evan I lost with him like bad. I grabbed a frying pan and I slammed it against the stove and completely just dented it. And the look on his face was absolute terror. And I'm like, oh dear Lord. I called my mom and I'm like, you need to come get him. He needs a safe place right now. And I can't handle him at this point. So my mom and she showed up and got him. And he ended up apologizing to me because he realized how disrespectful he had been. And of course I apologized to him because that's not a side of me that I ever wanted him to see. So that's an example of me losing control. If anybody else wants to share a story. Oh, that's a good one. Overeating. It can be very challenging to control yourself. That is true. A lot of people, when they're stressed or anxious, if they're just not feeling good about themselves, they can turn to food for comfort. Absolutely. Good one. All right. So we're going to talk about amygdala controls our emotional reactions again, because that's a big one. And that's a recurring theme through this whole thing. We're going to talk about the amygdala for the next 5 weeks that we're doing training. So we want to identify our feelings on the feeling wheel again, and kind of we can progress inward to outward to start narrowing it down why I feel this way, what's causing that root feeling. And we can take action to control the emotion and resolve the challenge. We need to be aware of that amygdala hijack that happens so frequently when we're having issues. Oh, this is a good one. I'm going to just pause right here. So one of the employees said, I was frustrated beyond belief with my crew leader at one point that I started asking other contractors on site if they were hiring. Like, holy cow, like that is definitely a point where you lose control and your amygdala's hijacked you and you're just like, I'm done. So that is a very good example of losing control. Definitely an amygdala hijack on that one. So that's a good example of what we're just talking about. So one of the things that we need to be careful about with an emotional hijacking is being influenced by other people's emotional hijacking. We all have a few people in our lives who can control our emotions, and we don't even necessarily recognize that. Could be a best friend, it could be a colleague, it could be a family member. My dad and I butt heads regularly. His emotion can easily trigger my emotion. So you've got to really pay attention to who those people are and don't feed into them. So usually I'm looking at my notes and I can't even talk. So usually, again, that person is someone that you respect, admire, or can identify with. Before taking this person's side or taking on their emotion, be objective. Look at the situation from all sides. And that's that critical thinking piece. We want to look at everything from all sides. and find an opportunity to coach the person rather than feed into his or her emotions. Whether you're having a disagreement or if you are agreeing, always find a way to get them past their own emotions and recognize your own so that you're not just kind of feeding into their negativity. This is a rhetorical question, but can any of you identify someone that you work with that feeds your emotions or that you feed into their emotions? You don't have to tell me who, but keep that in mind when you're talking to that person so that you can be aware, like, oh, every time this person comes to vent to me, I'm just like, oh yeah, and I'm agreeing with that person. I'm not doing anything to solve their problem. So foreshadowing is also something that we need to be aware of. So we see a sign, we can clearly see there's a hole coming up in the ground, and we immediately think, I'm just going to fall in. I know I'm going to fall in. I'm going to break my ankle. I'm going to break a leg. We need to find the root cause of that fear and ask ourselves, what am I afraid of? When we can determine, well, I'm afraid of falling, I'm afraid of breaking my ankle, we can then take action to get around it instead of going into it. And we can work through those things. So let's talk about, like, oh yeah, I had this huge project going on. It was going to suck the life right out of me. Like I couldn't even deal with it. Well, rather than feeling that way, think about it from another angle. Like, oh, this is a great project. I'm going to sit down before starting it and go through different levels of steps, which we talked about before, breaking down a big project into a much smaller segments so we can get through it. Overthinking. It's very unhealthy to dwell, and many of us do it, whether we do it all of the time or there are just some certain things, certain subjects that get on our brain, whether it's finances, kids, work, budgets, all kinds of stuff that we can sit there and overthink. Go back to the feeling wheel, identify what you're overthinking and how it's making you feel. Are you angry at yourself? Are you concerned that you're going to fail? Did you hold back somewhere and you wish you had said something instead of just remaining quiet? So what is the reason that you're overthinking? Take action to correct or ask for support to work through those scenarios. Just talking about it or even writing about it can help overcome overthinking. Again, go back to journaling. I know so many people say, I can't sleep at night because my brain just keeps going and going and going and going. Write it down. If you wake up at midnight and you can't stop thinking, just put it in writing somewhere so that it's out of your brain. You can deal with it the next day and you may be able to sleep better. So we got to be careful of self-blame. It's a very destructive behavior and creates negative emotions. You can clearly see the person on the left is very critical about him or herself, and the person on the right is very compassionate. Dear me, I choose a new inner voice. Again, recognize your thoughts, recognize how they're impacting you, how they're making you feel, and try so hard to change them. I'm constantly telling myself, and I know that everyone has a different opinion, but I'm struggling to lose weight. And I catch myself all the time saying, I'm never going to get there. And I stop myself and say, no, I'm going to exercise more. I'm going to eat better. And every Monday I start over. Every Monday I start working out again. I start eating better. And each week I go a little further. So sometimes I get to Tuesday and then I'll get to Wednesday. And then before I know it, over the next several months, I will start just making a life habit. So it's correcting that thought process and taking action. We want to be transparent. Let's be honest and have integrity, not only with others, but with ourselves. We want to manage ourselves and our responsibilities. We need to openly admit when we make mistakes or have faults. We need to have the ability to communicate how we felt about someone else's actions. And remember, we're not going to say you made me feel this way, but I feel this way because, and we can't nobody else controls our emotions and we can't give them that power. And that's such an important part of this, is not giving people the power to control your emotions. You may have an emotional reaction, but that's not their fault. That's how you reacted to something that they told you. So please keep that in mind as you are talking with people. Approach others regarding unethical behaviors. Don't pretend it didn't happen or sweep it under the rug. It's really important that we hold each other accountable, regardless of how small or large the unethical behavior is. Absolutely. If you take even just a baby step towards your goals every day, it's impossible to not eventually achieve them. I love that, Ben. And I'm going to take a screenshot of that so that we have it, and I'm going to share it with the others in the other groups. Perfect. I appreciate that. It is so true. All right, adaptability. This is probably one of my favorite things to talk about because I believe that I adapt pretty easy to things. I like change. It's stimulating. It creates growth personally, professionally, and it fosters a very collaborative work environment and even personal life environment. So adaptability is being flexible in changing situations and overcoming obstacles. It's being able to change your mind about something you previously thought. And having an open mind is so important. Ask yourself, what is the reason I believe what I believe? Is it because it's something that you've always done, something you've always believed? Is it something that you were taught as a child? Or I just know that it's best? These are not good reasons to continue believing what you believe. You have to have real reasons behind it. Consider this when holding on to your point of view that doesn't seem to be aligning to overall company goals and objectives. What assumptions are your point of view based on? Are there facts and data to support your view? How would you support your point of view if somebody asked you, why do you believe that? Why do you feel that way? Use these questions when asking about other person's perspectives. Open yourself up to other possibilities. And then I have a question coming in. Absolutely. Kim said, I look forward to change. It allows me to learn more. Change is amazing. Again, it's that personal growth, 100%. So obviously, many of you know that we've been through a lot of changes here at Belknap over the last couple of years. We are building a company of adaptability. We've changed the people, we've changed our culture, our technology is changing, and this picture really just spoke volumes to me when I was looking up something for this slide. And like, this is Belknap. This is exactly what we've been through. You know, and it's taken a lot. This can cause a lot of stress for people when there's this much change in such a short period of time. So talk about it, understand it. When we decide that we want to start to understand something, we're starting to open our mind. Absolutely. Be willing to hear others' opinions, even if you don't agree with it, but don't get angry about it. Just listen to them. They have valid reasons to believe what they believe. Great point, Amy. All right. So adapting does not mean changing who you are. It's an opportunity to grow, to learn, while maintaining your own values. So here's a personal story. Again, I hope you guys don't mind my personal stories. But back in my early 20s, I met this gentleman named Chris Gibbs. Kim's probably laughing because she knows him. And it was my first job at the Guilford Mobile Mart when there was an Italian restaurant, Natalie's or Natalia's was next door. The Roadkill Cafe was on the other side. We had the Big Banana behind us. But it was my first job out of high school. And Chris was this larger than life personality, and he was very Gothic. And he had a group of friends who were very Gothic. And I was, you know, this little town girl who just was normal. And I quickly became very close friends with them, but I didn't change who I was. And they appreciated that about me. They liked the fact that I wasn't going to just become this person who wore all black and listened to Nine Inch Nails and all the music they listened to. They appreciated that I could maintain myself and still respect who they were and appreciate their points of views and why they were the way that they were. I didn't judge them in any way, shape, or form. They didn't in turn judge me, and they easily could have. They could have, said, "Oh God, she's just normal society and doesn't understand us." And they gave me that opportunity to show that I did understand them, and it was really a great opportunity, and it changed a lot of the way that I think about the world, and it really developed who I was as a person. So how can we do this at work? Well, we have new technology, new procedures, new policies, new people. Don't be dismissive or judgmental about the things that we're bringing in and asking you to try. Give the change ample time to make adjustments on both sides. Anytime we make a change, there are going to be stumbles. There's going to be mistakes that we make. There are going to be adjustments that we have to make. So when Aspire moves into the construction world, it's not going to be perfect. There are going to be hiccups. We're going to have to work through them. You got to give things an ample amount of time to work itself out. Work through those challenges with us and make suggestions. And don't feed into another person's emotions. Doing so only fuels a negative feeling and blocks the road to adapting and growth. So let's look at things from a different perspective as well. That's a big part of adaptability. So we need to develop how we approach things. Do some perspective talking. Take the time to literally imagine yourself in the other person's place. Ask yourself from their perspective, what would I want? Remember, your perspective is your own personal point of view. This is also key to being proactive when you ask yourself about what is someone else's wants or needs for this, and asking yourself that ahead of time. So when you go to talk to them, you can answer those questions proactively instead of reactively. Then there's a thing called perspective seeking. This will help better understand the other point of view. Talk to people, ask questions about their perspective. Know that what they say, even if it differs from your own perspective, is not good or bad. It's simply a perspective. Don't seek out people don't seek out people that have the same point of view as you. You're not going to learn anything from them. And then there's perspective coordinating. Take the information you receive from both perspectives and from the perspective taking and perspective seeking, and consider the impact your decision making has on them. Every time you make a decision, there's an impact on somebody else. So before you make the decision, say, how is this going to impact somebody? Communicate with the people you spoke with about your perspective and help them see the bigger picture that you have created by seeing the situation from all sides. Explain where you're coming from. We're not saying that just because you put yourself in someone's other shoes, that you have to take their perspective and not make any changes. We're saying when you do make those changes, take into consideration how that's going to impact them and guide them, knowing how they feel, into the change and get them to understand it. Be curious. Be genuinely curious about change. Ask questions and be open to information that you will receive. It's that simple. Have more than one plan. There's always more than one way to get to an end result. Have different plans available in case one doesn't work out. If you have different plans going on, you may be able to work one plan into other people's perspectives so that they don't feel like they're being left out and now they're on board with you. Change most often happens over a period of time. If you are finding one way of adapting isn't working, try something else. Have a support system. Look for positive support from others, mentors, colleagues, management. Be careful not to get caught up in colluding or feeding into other people's emotions. It's absolutely okay to vent as long as once you're done venting, you're looking for a solution. If you're looking to just vent and you want someone else to say that you're right about the way that you feel, you're not going to grow from that. You're not going to gain anything from it except for being miserable. It's, and we want to take that miserable experience and turn it into something positive. So once you're done venting, talk about how you can find a solution to it. Know your own reactions. What emotions does the change create for you? Work through that before you communicate with others. Use the feeling wheel, write down your thoughts, and talk through it with someone else. Try new things. And this is so hard for people, including myself. I like my comfort zone. I like the people I hang out with. And it's very difficult for me to even go to a friend's house when there's going to be new people there that I haven't met. That's one of my biggest anxieties, but I force myself to do it because you never know who you're going to meet. You never know the opportunities that you may get from it. And it just builds your character. So practice change by trying new things, whether it's an activity, start a new hobby, meeting new people, control the uncomfortable. If you say, I'm going to join a beginner's hiking group and I'm going to start hiking with people I don't know, you have control of that change. That's your choice. And then you start to become more comfortable with it. Be achievement oriented. This is your drive to meet internal standard of excellence. It's not about meeting a goal for anybody else but you. So how do we achieve excellence? Well, we need to learn the new and improve the old. So it's okay if we're still using the old way as long as we're making improvements on it. We want to foster feedback, give and receive that feedback, ask for it. Accept challenge with a positive outlook. If somebody has a challenge for you, don't like, oh God, I just don't want to deal with it today. Try to think of it as an opportunity and look at it with a positive light that you're helping someone else, you're helping yourself, you're going to learn something. Explore and try new things. Objectively calculate your risk. We're going to go back to that hole where we see the hole in the ground, and rather than think, well, I'm going to break my ankle. Well, that is definitely a risk, but how can I negate that risk? Get out of your comfort zone, try new things, and be open to innovation. We're going to be bringing technology in. We're going to start getting to a point where we drastically reduce our paper use here. And that's going to take innovation, and it's going to take everyone kind of getting on board with it. Not kind of, it is. So what are some ways that you can achieve a goal? Set small and attainable goals. We've gone over that. Monitor your progress. Reward yourself for attaining those goals. Be patient with yourself and with others. I think self-patience is probably the hardest thing. I can be patient with others most often, but with myself, there are days I just sit here and go, what am I doing? And I've got to reflect on that. Identify resources you will need: the people, materials, technical skills, soft skills, motivation, and balance. Balance is a good one. So all things for achievement is progress, not perfection. Be careful not to confuse achievement with perfection. Be able to recognize and correct when you may become too critical of yourself or others, or you become possessive of your work and are unwilling to delegate. The result may be unnecessary stress and burnout for you. It's important. And I know that sometimes people feel self-important when they have this huge role and they've got to do it all. So they want to keep it all, because if they don't get to say, I did it all, then they don't feel important. And that's not the case. A true leader is someone who can say, I've got this huge workload and I'm going to give this piece to that person. I'm going to give piece to that person, and I'm going to give this piece to that person, and I'm going to work on this for myself. And that is just as successful and just as important as doing it all yourself. And you're going to relieve so much stress. It's a fantastic. Delegating is probably one of the best things in the world. So our final thought on achievement orientation is, without deviation from the norm, progress is not possible. So now we're going to get into initiative. Initiative is the readiness to seize opportunities and act. What does taking initiative mean to you? So we're going to go through that. So what does it mean to you to take the initiative? All right, who haven't I heard from? I don't think I've heard. Oh, Kim did. Let's see. I'll go through my participants. I heard from Amy, Ben, Cody, I don't know if Cody, have you said anything? If not, type something. Jay's been really quiet. I've heard from Jess. Patty, I don't know if I've heard from you today. So anyone that hasn't really responded, it'd be great to get some participation from you. So go ahead. And so the question is, what does taking the initiative mean to you? Yeah, I've got some good ones. Speak up if you have an idea. It means to take action. So anything else for taking the initiative? All right, well, clearly, oh, there we go. That's a good one. Standing out by stepping up. That's fantastic. Doing stuff that needs to be done, whether it's in your job description or not. That's a great one. Absolutely. Good job, guys. Thank you. So readiness to seize the opportunities and act. Work without being told what to do. Stay motivated. Be positive. Set your intentions for the day or the project, whatever you're working on. Get the job done. Motivation is contagious. That is so true. When other people see you working hard, they're more likely going to work hard with you. And don't take on too much. Again, use that delegation 100%. Let's make things happen. How can we take the initiative? We're going to simplify our tasks. We're going to ask for help. We're going to think through potential issues. We're going to look for opportunities. We're going to stay organized. That's important. And know your ambitions and goals and work towards them regularly. And if that means every day you got to write down what your goals are for that day to reach the bigger goal, absolutely do it. Yes, ask if you need help, for sure. That's so important. Some people find that that's a weakness, and it is. Asking for help is one of the biggest strengths you can possibly have, because it shows that you have a true understanding of your own limitations and that you are not going to allow stress to rule your life. So ask for help. We're getting near the end, guys. Oh, like I said, I didn't think this was going to last a full 3 hours, but I just wanted to give myself time. So, all right, so we're going to talk about staying positive without faking it.
Step number,
Like me.
How to stay positive at work without faking it. The truth is, you're going to be spending at least 1/3 of your lifetime at work, doing work, and hopefully it is something that you're inspired by. Hopefully it is something that brings you fulfillment. And when I say being positive at work, I'm not talking about some woo-woo, think positive thoughts and everything's going to be okay. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about true fulfillment. I'm talking about how can you be congruent with positivity? How can you be truly deep inside at your core, in your heart of hearts, feeling that this is where you belong. So I'm going to give you 6 steps that you can take to be more positive authentically at work without faking it. Step number 1 is to be congruent with positivity. It's just like a marriage. I mean, you can't expect to go into a marriage and that it will make you happy. You have to already be happy when you go into that marriage, and then you will have a better chance of ensuring that that marriage will be happy and to be congruent with positivity. And the same is true of your career. You have to already be a happy person. You have to already be a positive person. And recognize that everything that you do, all the decisions that you make, all the decisions that you don't make or that you avoid making, all the actions you take are driven by your desires, and you have an emotion around those desires. So everything you do is driven by the emotions of that desire. So go and watch my video, the video I did on how to find fulfilling work, what they don't teach you in school, where I talk about the 6 basic human needs. These basic human needs they represent deep core desires that you have, and these core desires are what drive your actions. So start by recognizing the emotions and the desires that motivate you rather than the barriers that are in your way. And you'll notice that the perceptions, it's all about your perceptions, how you perceive a situation that comes your way. And you can be able to control the situation from your mind. So for example, if you do look for positive things about your career, you're going to find them. And the same is true on the other side. If you are going to be searching for negative things to confirm your suspicions, you will also find those too. The key is to experience the emotions, because you will nonetheless, regardless of what you do encounter, positive or negative, you will experience a set of emotions. The key is to experience them, but not be overwhelmed by them, and definitely not to let them run your life. And the way to do that is to develop a greater level of emotional intelligence. And that's when you can weather the storm. The negative things that come your way, the challenges, the failures that you will inevitably face, you know that they are unavoidable. But suffering is a choice that is a choice. So your response to the challenges and failures that inevitably will come your way along your career journey, the response that you have to them, that will change the playing field. It is a completely new game when you respond to them in a way that is productive and that is conducive to you achieving your career goals. Step number 2 is to focus on your impact. Find the meaning behind what you do, the impact of what you do, and connect to your daily tasks, especially those that are trivial to you. Look for meaning behind what you do in terms of, for example, the relationship you have with your coworkers or the work that you do. And if none of those apply to you, if you're struggling to find meaning there, connect it then to a cause that you are passionate about. For example, during my career as an academic, there were a lot of things about doing research, about being a PhD student that were definitely trivial and that I did not enjoy. And so my adoptive parents, they are from Uganda, and what they do there is they have an orphanage called Eagle's Wings Children's Village. And so what I did was I dedicated my task to earning to give. And this is a concept where I would give a percentage of my income to their orphanage. And for them, they transformed that country of Uganda, hundreds of children, orphans otherwise who had no chance of a future, now they are provided for. They have the basic survival, they have education, clothing, medical care. And for me, that was my outlet for finding meaning in what I do. Comment below, how are you feeling negative at your work? If you like this content, give me a thumbs up, and also remember to subscribe to my channel. Ring that bell as well so you can receive notifications each time I upload a new video every week. Step number 3 is to reward your accomplishments. Now I understand that when you have a to-do list, you have the checklist of items that you need to do, it feels so satisfying to check those items off. But what if it was filled with things that you were dreading, things that you didn't quite enjoy, things that you found trivial? Then the motivation is lost. It is harder to check those items off the list because you just don't feel like doing them. So one thing to get around that is to award your accomplishments. Use what I call if-then statements. So you would say something like this: if I finish my 300-page report, say you had a 300-page report that you needed to write, then you would say something like, if I wrote the first page, then I will reward myself by buying a latte, or if I finished cleared my inbox for today of emails, responding to customers, then I will award myself by buying myself a milkshake or going to a nice lunch. And so that works in terms of anticipating a reward, and also, but it's an if-then statement, so you only get the reward if you do what you set out to do, right? And make sure that your reward is commensurate with the accomplishment that you make. So if it's a bigger accomplishment, for example, you're landing a deal with a collaborator, or you are presenting and convincing your team to go a different direction, like something that deserves a bigger reward, right? So a bigger reward could be whatever that means to you. You get to go skiing, or you get to go to happy hour with a bunch of friends, whatever that is. Make that if-then statement valuable, something that you can look forward to. Step number 4 is to think of the worst case scenario. So ask yourself, what's the worst that can happen? Because sometimes the worst that can happen is very unlikely, and it isn't that bad. So when you go through this exercise of going through what is the worst thing that can happen if I'm making this presentation, or if I'm trying to make a deal with this collaborator, what's the worst that can happen? And sometimes you might find with that exercise that the stakes aren't as high as you made them out to be. But more importantly, thinking through the worst case scenario will help you to take the steps to avoid it. Step number 5 is to improve your space. The things that are around in your immediate environment really can affect how you feel. So make sure that you surround yourself with things that foster more of a positive mindset rather than a negative one. For example, when I was working in the corporate world, a lot of the things that I did in my role didn't inspire me, and a lot of times I found them trivial. So I surrounded myself in my office and in my immediate surroundings with things that reminded me more of home. You know, I would include pictures, you know, a calendar of photos that really inspired me, that brought on a positive mindset that I really enjoyed, and some of the things that are sentimental to me. And also in your environment, it also includes people, you know, so surround yourself with people who support you, people who understand what you're going through, people that you can trust, that you can open up to, and also people that are winners themselves. They're not complainers. They're not the type that always talk about negative things, because you know the saying that misery likes company. So make sure that you surround yourself with your environment, with people, with things, and with objects that foster a positive mindset. Step number 6 is to practice gratitude. Remember to thank those who have helped you along the way, and give credit where credit is due. Because practicing gratitude, you know, being thankful for the things that you already have, that is an insurance policy against egotism. Because you simply can't feel negativity when you are appreciative and when you are thankful.
So I hope these tips do help you in adapting as we move forward. Again, there's been a lot of change and there's still more change to come. You know, practicing gratitude, number 6, is probably the one that I need to work on more than any of the others. So if there is one in that list that you feel you need to work on, make that a personal task of yours over the next several weeks to really put some effort into it and work through whatever you need to work through to get better at it. Next. So we are at the end, my friends. We did pretty good. So this is your homework. After this, after I'm done, I'm going to send you guys this entire slideshow. And I am going to send you a list of questions that you will need to ask friends or family as part of the self-awareness piece. And it's getting to, again, it's that becoming uncomfortable and learning to control our emotions when people are giving us feedback, recognizing that the way we see ourselves is not the way that others see us. And their perspective isn't necessarily true, but it is a perspective, and that others may see us in that same way. So I do ask that you take some time and find a few people to ask those questions. And then doing 10 minutes of reflection time, whether it's each day or every other day or even once a week, just to sit down and give yourself time to just go through your emotions and work through those things. Again, this is going to be the most touchy-feely part of the training. So, but it's important to have that connection with yourself and understand yourself better, so that the next few trainings that we go through, it will be much easier for you to navigate. With that, I'm just going to ask if there are any additional questions for today. I'm not seeing any. What I would like from you is if each of you or any of you would think that there's some way that I could improve this, make it easier to communicate, whether I move this into a meeting format where I see everybody, so that we can have better interaction. Unfortunately, with COVID and everything, doing this through Zoom was not my ideal way of training, but it's easier for you because then you don't have to come to the office and then go out wherever you need to go. But I do hope that if there's anything that you feel I can improve, that you let me know, and I will take that under consideration. You can just shoot me an email. Other than that, I hope everyone, oh, hold on, we have something. Cool. Enjoyed the videos. Videos are good. So I hope all of you have a fantastic day, and I will see you in 2 weeks. Thank you.